I'm Gail Green. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Northern Wake Campus and Human Resources. And I understand that you met Benita Clark, who is our Chief Human Resource Officer this morning. So we're here to talk to you about applied benchmarking. But I understand that Dr. Scott talked about it a little bit this morning. So I know you weren't told that you would have a quiz, but so what did you hear Dr. Scott say about benchmarking this morning? That way I won't repeat what he told you. Does anybody remember?
It doesn't have to work.
That's very important. It does not have to work. Why? Why? Okay, it's a trial. And go ahead. Yes, we very often learn more from failing than from succeeding. And that's awful, but it's an awful truth, right? So if we didn't risk anything, if we don't take chances, then we're not likely to stumble onto the next best thing. Okay, anything else that you remember? What else did he tell you this morning? Yes, ma'am.
It's bottoms up and things that we want to improve in.
That's right. And the way I like to say it is the best idea should rule. Okay? And you never know where that best idea is going to come from, and we need to listen to everyone. Because sometimes those best ideas come from, maybe someone that we would not expect. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, how do we find who out in the wide world that knows the answer? Or if we can think of something we'd like to improve ourselves, why are we forced to find an instructor in some distant universe that will agree to answer our email?
Right. Now, and let's go ahead and talk about that. The biggest challenge that we have found is when you're trying to contact other faculty that they are also busy, like you're going to be very busy. And my guess is like what happens to us sometimes. We see the email and we say, yes, we'll get back to that, but we put it over here in a to-do list, and we don't really mean to neglect and not help this other faculty member in another state, but it's not the top priority. Now, the funny thing, and Benita will appreciate this, in some cases we've advised faculty who didn't hear back from anyone, call the HR department, and sure enough, somebody in HR always seems to call back. That's because it's drilled into our heads that customer service, and we have to call back. But in some cases, HR was able to give them some other suggestions for people. HR, knowing what everybody is like, was able to give some suggestions. Now, what I have found the best route is through journal articles. So I'm always looking at professional journals, or if you're part of organizations, and maybe a listserv or some sort of group that you follow. I like to find the best ideas that way. And then I track down the authors, or sometimes it's a graduate student who is involved. The graduate students will call me back if the tenured faculty won't. And that I have found to be the best way. So I first search through typical means, like you were doing your standard research, and then track down the person who was involved. And I've had more luck that way.
Okay, I was told it had the other community colleges, and the best I know, they don't have graduate students. It doesn't have to be that. I was told that. Okay, no.
Well, yeah, not that we're aware of.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be another community college.
Because there may be, depending on what you want to do, it might be more relevant to talk to a community college, but there are a lot of things that we can learn. We're often talking with lawyers and all kinds of non-academics. So as far as I know, there's...
I was incorrectly told that.
Now, unless your supervisor for some reason specified that we're not aware that that's the case. Yes, ma'am.
Well, in my research, I found that the other community colleges were more willing to, share and give information.
Yes. Well, Benita, tell them what you found with that. Benita came from the corporate world.
Well, I got here in 2010, and anybody else come from corporate? Okay, so what it's all about, we own this material, we own this, intellectual property, and if somebody from another corporation called and said, will you send me your handbook? I'm like, I'm sending you my handbook. You know, what do you want it for? And then community college, you send out, we have these mail lists, and I can send out an email to all 57 community colleges and say, can I see your policy on whatever? Boom, boom, boom. I'm getting all these answers. So yes, community colleges do share, they're willing to share, very open. It's a totally new experience for me. The whole deal about sharing money, you know, we're the largest community college, we're number one. Corporate world, we like that, right? We like being number one. So my question to Dr. Green was, why we got to give some of our money to the little colleges? It's our money. So I had to think very differently. I think y'all heard me say earlier that I wouldn't go back to corporate unless it was kicking and screaming. And that's one of the reasons is how we do work together and how everybody is so they're collaborative and warm. You know, I guess it's just part of the nature of who we are as a community college.
And my last benchmarking was for someone in Oregon. And so it doesn't, the community college folks there seem to be very much like us. She was just as willing to share. She sent me all these documents, and there's not a sense of ownership. We're usually kind of proud to brag, you know, especially, well, and what we try to do as a larger school, there are more of us. We have a lot of resources. So when a smaller school asks us for help, and sometimes, bless her heart, Benita has actually traveled to the small schools to help very small HR departments. Sometimes one person is the whole HR department. And so she's gone, and we do these things pro bono, and we're lucky if we get gas mileage. But anyway, so I'm not suggesting that everyone will reply. I think the thing to do is start early and have a backup plan. So like I said, my personal best success has been by researching what I can find out, you know, out there, and also, you know, professional organizations. And if you do get the chance to go to a conference, several times I've found someone I was very impressed with at a conference, luckily out of state in some cases, who could, you know, get me to the right place. So just let me show you we just touch the mouse. So it's a very simple form, and in just a minute I'll show you how to get there. But it's just, you know, an outline, because the idea is continuous improvement. Now, and the outside of North Carolina part, a few times a supervisor has been able to approve an exception to that, but that's something, you know, Dr. Scott wanted us to go outside North Carolina. But if you have a really compelling reason to benchmark someone in North Carolina, like it's something that only applies to us in North Carolina, you may ask your supervisor, but in most cases, it's outside. Now, be sure that you get your concept approved by in your case, they're all your department heads. And most likely in the next month or so, they're going to be asking you for your ideas. So what you tell them the direction that you want to go in. Now, it may not turn out the way you expect, but they'll ask you what you're trying to do. So we talked about how to identify a top performer. And and back to your original question about why, one thing that we're trying to do is learn the mistakes from other schools. As a campus person, I talk to other schools, especially like in Florida and Texas, really large systems with really large campuses. And I wanted to know what they regretted. What would you have done differently? And I've learned a lot of don't go there's. And so I found that information. So sometimes by learning a negative, we plan what we want to do instead. And now sometimes, being Wake Tech, you know, we'll go, well, we already do this better than anybody else, right? Now, Dr. Scott doesn't like that particular answer. He says that we can always improve. Even if we're already the best at what we do, then we can always find a way to improve, even if it's based on a negative answer. And so the rest of it, I think, is very, very simple. Don't be afraid to start with something small and something that just affects you and your classroom, being who you are. It's anything that happens in your classroom is important. So don't feel like it has to be a great big global thing. This can just be something in one of your classes, not all of your classes. So especially this first year when you're new, you're not as familiar with the college as a whole and what or maybe the culture. So just focus on something in your little world, big world, your world, but in just one of your classes, and that will be fine. All right, and then you can attach supporting documents if you need to, of course. Now let's go back and show them how to get here. HR can always help you if you need us. Hopefully, in the next few months, we're going to have a part of our portal where the benchmarking exercises will be listed. So in case someone else is doing a benchmarking exercise similar to yours, you might want to team up. Especially since you're new, you might go to a veteran teacher in your discipline and say, hey, are you doing a benchmarking that I can help with? Actually, that's a really good suggestion. Being new, say, hey, can I piggyback on somebody's idea? Because it's often that a group of department members will take on something more complex, more than one person should do, and so then you divide up the pieces of it, okay? So I think that would be smart. So let's just get out and take them back where I just wanted to show them how I got there. We hope this is going to be more friendly in the future. We're working on that. All right, so when you log on, of course, you see our splash page. Go to Employees, Eagle's Nest. Then over here on the side, under Forms, and come down to Human Resources. Here we are. And down towards the bottom, you see the benchmarking exercise? And that's where I pulled up the PDF. There's also a Word version so that you can type on it. Almost everyone uses this as a template and then creates his or her own document instead of I wouldn't recommend typing on it. This is just your guideline. Also, in a few weeks, after things settle down, I'll be sending out an email with these attachments to make it easy, but just in case you need it before then. What else? What have I forgotten?
I just want to reiterate and make sure that you get the benchmark project approved, because you hate to be halfway through it, and then your supervisor is telling you, that isn't what I wanted you to do, that wasn't the direction I wanted you to go in, that has happened. And so, I had employees stop in my office, do I have to do it? My supervisor? Yeah, you might do that. And also, I'm going to be very honest and disclose something. When I came on board in 2010, I was very, very busy. And so, when my supervisor, Dr. Green, told me in 2011 how to do this, I was still very, very busy. And I resisted a little bit. I was like, hell, I'm busy. I benchmark all the day. I talk, all day. So then I had a chance to talk with Dr. Scott. Maybe there was a convocation, so we were talking afterwards. And he said, Benita, I heard people actually grumbling about my benchmark project. I'm like, what's that? No, you kidding me? So I said that to say, embrace this, ask for help, don't let it be a stressor. Once I got involved with my benchmark, I was very excited about it, talking to different people, trying to apply it. Gail allowed us, this past year, we came up with ideas, and it did take us a little longer to get in touch with some people. So there are a couple of us that wanted to apply our ideas. So we have researched in one semester, in 1 year, and then we're going to actually apply it in the new year. Like we have a new orientation recommendation for new hires that we want to try. So my employees did all the research and came up with everything, and then this year I'm going to allow them to apply it. So we can be creative on how to get these things done. Just stay in contact with your supervisor. Ask your supervisor for help. That's what they're there for. You can't come up with an idea.
And if your department head hasn't asked in the next few weeks, then you would say, well, I learned in orientation that I was supposed to do benchmarking, and is it time to get the approvals done? Okay, all right. So just all of us we do this all the time. You are constantly trying to improve. I know you are. Teachers do this. It's an innate part of who we are because we're trying to reach our students. So just take one of those great things that you do all the time and formalize it so you can get credit for it. So you're going to get credit for something that you do anyway. Okay? All right, any questions about it? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes. And sometimes you get into it and you get it started and you're not quite finished, or you learn something new, or you want to expand it. And that's when you can go back and say to your supervisor, you know, I just got started on this and I really like it. I'd like to add this component or that one. And that's often what happens. Or sometimes your idea, some of your colleagues will like it and they'll want to join in and add aspects to it. On our side of the house, like in facilities, they pick a community college every year, and then all the various guys in the various, in this case they were mostly men, the men in the various positions, they study the person like them at another community college. So I think there have been some academic, foreign language, I believe did it that way. There have been some academic groups that studied various aspects of I think in foreign languages case, it was the way they did testing or some of their oral examinations and so forth, and they contacted different people. So if, when you get the chance, a group project is more exciting perhaps. Not always. Some of you would prefer, I think, to do an individual one. I know, you know, some of my folks I know would much rather do an individual one, so it's up to you. Any more questions about benchmarking? Yes, Carlos.
Since it's now called applied benchmarking,
Yes, sir.
do you guys have one or two strategies for actually applying it after you've done it that's kind of worked for you too?
Well, now, as a faculty member, if it's about your classroom, then within reason, you have a great deal of control over it. What those of us on the staff side of the house, often the improvements we want to make involve other people and money. And so how to come up with a project that doesn't cost money, or then we have to negotiate with the department, is there any money that can apply towards this? As faculty, you're fortunate to some degree in that you have a lot of control over, you know, what's going on in your own classroom. And you can most likely make an improvement without asking for money. Then if it's a great idea and the first year it goes well, then it's easier to turn around the next year and say, is there any money, you know, for this? And all you can do is do a good job. Numbers and research will often be influential on your department head. There's always some amount of money, and the smartest people with the best plan are, you know, the ones who have a shot at that. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
I go from.
Well, everything, like you said, you did research for a year and then you applied it. So every idea that would have to be completed in the year, right?
Ask your supervisor.
Well, in her case,
In my case, I had approval to do it.
she also had a layered project. And so when you've got a lot of different people involved and a lot of different personnel with different roles, that's when it often runs into another year. Honestly, this first year, I would keep it simple, or I would ask if there's an existing faculty member who's already got something going. Just for, you've got enough on your plate this year. You've got a lot to adjust to anytime you come to a new place. So I would keep it simple. And you know, maybe something you've been wanting to change in your class or research for the spring. And it might be that after you're here for a few weeks, and if our environment is different than the one you came from, that might stimulate ideas about benchmarking. And you may find, like Benita did, we learned a great deal from her corporate experience. And we were able to apply things that she learned in the corporate world, believe it or not, to the community college situation.
The nice stuff.
Not the downsizing, you're fired kind of stuff, but the certain way of thinking, and we tried to be open to that. We tried to be open to those new ideas. So you may find that something from your past affects what you are doing right now. Certainly your department head does, and then now they're going to all go into a website, and the like ones will be collected together. They're also part of your formal appraisal, so you know, we could read them if we wanted to, but I promise that's your department head, and that's the most important person.
And sometimes Dr. Scott will send the VPs an email and say, you know, send me what you consider your best benchmark project. And then they'll send them in, and if he can find the money to make one of them happen, then he will. There's a reason why we're the largest community college down in North Carolina. It's Dr. Scott. And so that's why I say it's if we embrace this and make it a positive. And I know it can be frustrating. My first person I chose that I thought was just going to get right back to me, that woman made me hunt her down like a bill collector. I'm like, oh really? You're not going to answer my email? You know, I'm emailing, I'm telling her how brilliant she is, I'm using all the tools you told me.
I told
They didn't work. No, it
Sorry.
worked. So I found something.
I always feed the ego, you know, I say, oh, I read this article, I just thought it was a brilliant article, you know, can you please call me and talk to me? Well, it doesn't always work, yeah.
But don't get stuck on one person. That was my mistake. I kept trying to get that one person, and obviously they were too busy for me. I should have just moved on very quick, and I did. So luckily I have a nice boss, and she let me switch gears. But the most important thing is to find out what your supervisor's expectation, what their expectation is, because it may be different from others. And the benchmark, we use those. How many of you have been with Wake Tech, but you're just now going full time? Okay, so.
Well, this isn't news to you.
No, it's not.
Dr. Scott's been talking about this for 3 years.
2011, when Dr. Scott heard there were rumbles about the benchmark, he wanted to reward the employees that did the benchmark. And so he wanted to know the names of the employees that got the benchmark, and the people that did received a $500 bonus at Christmas. And the ones that.
Well, no, that was the 1%.
The 1%.
Yeah, they got a 1% raise. That was a raise.
That's right.
At the end.
Yeah.
Now, we don't get that every year,
We
so.
don't get it every year.
But he has something he's going to tell you about on Thursday that will help, but it's not quite as good as that. If you read the papers, you know that some years we have great restrictions over how we can spend our money. Yes. Oh, yes, but I would ask my department head, so you'll have samples from your discipline. But absolutely, that's a good idea. Ask your department head for some of the best samples. We're trying to get those online, but I'm sure, because we hear them talk about that, they'll know right off the example they'd like to give you. Okay, anything else? Yes.
The benchmarking idea, so they more or less restructuring ideas into restructuring class or class or adding something.
Yes, he's asking can it be adding something to the course or restructuring something, just redesigning an assignment, any of those things. Any of those things. That's why you have a lot of material right there in what you're doing every day. Yes, sir. I wouldn't go after that my first year.
I started in October, so I piggybacked a group and then.
Oh, good. If you have a group, sometimes you can.
So I was going to try it on my own, and it is overwhelming, so what they're telling y'all is absolutely right, don't go out on your own, just piggyback somebody your first year. But, the one that I piggybacked on, we were in need of a piece of equipment, we thought actually. When we started contacting other colleges, we learned we didn't need that piece of equipment, and we went another route.
Good.
So when you start contacting these people, you actually start learning things and you modify what you started out with when you've been on. That's all part of your report. This is all in ours now, but it's amazing what you learn once you start with an idea and get other people's ways or means or whatever they're doing. And yeah, because I started out with one, I thought about our report, man, look at what I learned at the end, so.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
But she's not a plant. We didn't. She's a real faculty member. Yes.
Now, time that we spend doing this can count for professional development hours, correct? That 30 hours?
You want to talk to your department head about that one. I don't want to, because there are permutations associated there, and I'd rather let the department answer that. See, we know when not to touch things. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I've been here long enough that I have done a couple of benchmarks. I'll be happy to share a couple that I did as far as classroom specific.
Great.
And essentially, my first one was that I did see a speaker at one of my physics organizations, and they had a specific plan in their classroom to let students do test corrections. I know that strikes all kinds of fear in people to let students do test corrections, but they had a specific rubric of how you give points specifically for that particular thing. And what I was looking for, especially in physics, is you gotta build the student's confidence. And if they can figure out that I eventually can figure this out, then they start improving their test scores later in the semester. So it was an experiment in the classroom to let them do test corrections using this person's model and documenting basically how did I see things improve compared to, say, previous semesters. And if it works, then we keep doing it, that kind of thing.
Well, since you have this group's emails, would you go ahead and share yours? With the
Yeah,
group?
actually, I applied to, our department actually does have them on our Moodle site. We have them kind of located there. But yeah, you can do that. And the one I'm working on now is researching how I can recruit more women in STEM fields.
Yay!
So, and that I think is going to be a little more long-term, and we've got several people in our department.
And you might have people want to jump onto that.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of the ideas.
And that's the kind of classic faculty benchmarking I kind of imagine is something that has a direct impact on your class and your students. All right. Okay, we know it's been a long day, but you do have the HR folks in front of you. So over the course of the day, have there been any questions that you didn't want to ask anybody else, but now that we're standing here, is there anything that you'd like to ask us while you have us here? Well, let me just say one more time. I know you heard this morning, but if we're going to have a culture where we are constantly trying to improve, what things do you need from the college if we want you to be in a constant state of being willing to improve? What do you need from us?
Support.
Yeah, you need our support. You need some time to do it. What kind of support do you need from us?
Well, constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism. Good. Okay. That's helpful. And so what we always want to say when we get the chance is, especially since you're new, that we absolutely want you to have an environment that encourages you to be innovative, but in order to have that kind of environment, you need to feel like that your situation is free of harassment and discrimination. And so if you even wonder if maybe if you're feeling like that, then you need to come and talk to one of us because we feel very strongly about that, right? And any of our HR folks, if you just want to test an idea, that's what we're for. And you can ask us to put our HR hats on and go into that mode, and you can talk to us confidentially, and we'll try to give you good advice, especially since you're new.
It'll be confidential as long as you don't tell me something that I have to act on. And I always ask that question when someone says, "Hey, can I talk to you confidentially?" And I say,
right.
Has anybody broken a law, policy? If they say no, I'm like, come on in, let's talk about it. And it may just be a discussion about, I'm having a hard time getting my supervisor to listen to me. How do you suggest I approach him or her or this? We have those conversations. We can do some role playing. As you get to know me better, and those of you who raise your hand around the room, you know that I try to get advice that's on real world. There are a lot of good books out there, and y'all say, if you do this, you'll see that. If you do this, you'll see that. That does not happen half the time. My first thing I might ask you is, who's your supervisor? And then if I know that supervisor, I'll know how to give you the best advice.
That's right.
Because we know.
We're all different.
Right. And I know which of the VPs like for it to be straight to, and then you have a VP who else just sit down and talk with you and talk about theory and those kinds of things.
Until it makes her crazy, isn't it?
Crazy, I'm like, stop.
She likes the practical
I
stuff.
like practical things. So, but very open door to our HR department. I've been in this profession for over 17 years on a professional level. Kind of tell my age a little bit, but I do enjoy what I do. I'm very committed, very, very committed for everyone to feel like they work in a safe and comfortable work environment, and they should feel respected and be treated with dignity and respect. I firmly believe that. If any of you have ever had a bad boss, right? So I had one. I had a bad boss. My last year at the company that I was in, and I enjoyed all the previous 13 years at that company, and then that last year, I got a bad boss. So every time I think about how am I going to treat one of my employees, I think, what would Mark do? And I do the exact opposite. So I do talk to supervisors a lot when they come to me, and I'm like, okay, is it about you or is it about this employee? What are you doing? So we really work with supervisors. There's a lot of supervisor training that we conduct to tell them how to be good supervisors, good leaders, and not just managers. So if you're having a concern and need somebody confidential to talk to, and I tell me something that I have to act on.
And that means something that if we determine something really is harassment or discrimination, then legally, of course. But we will take you through that. You won't be by yourself. And we're very, very careful. You know, we're going to be very careful about anyone's reputation because we all know how any kind of accusation can be life ruining sometimes and affect careers. So we deal with that all very, very carefully. And sometimes you just need someone to talk to a little, just to get another opinion. So we just wanted to say that again while we're standing here. And if it turns out not to be true, then you can come back and say, well, you told us on our first day here. Okay?